hug everyone from my mind. So, this is San Diego, the rise of Music City. It's gonna go for around 120 minutes, so like 2 hours, and we're gonna divide it in like 5 sections, around 20 to 30 minutes each. And I wanna introduce myself really quick. I'm Scarlett Santa Maria. I've been in the industry for 8 years. I started my own DJing business when I was 16 with my dad, and I'm still doing it. So if you need a DJ for your daughter's quince or your wedding, you know who to hit up. And I also host the Scarlet Letter Show, which is a show with KCR College Radio, and I interview DJs and experience creators in the electronic music community. So now your turn to introduce yourself.
Jay did a pretty good job. Yeah, so I'm Justin. I'm one of the producers of West Coast Weekender. This is our 4th year. I also own the Deep End, which is an event brand that we do music and art for the underground is the mantra. I'm one of the owners at Courtyard, which is an outdoor container space. What else? We produce Daybreaker in San Diego, and just all around passionate dude. And I'd like to start with Fernando, maybe give a little intro on what you're all about.
Sure. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Fernando Lopez. I'm the executive director of San Diego Pride. We are this region's largest civic event. We have about 300,000 people come to our event every single year. At the festival, we have about 45,000. And so we use music as a venue, as an avenue for social justice and support for the LGBT community. And it happens to be one of the largest and most philanthropic prides in the world. And I'm their pleasure to be their executive director.
Gardenia, please.
Hi, good morning. My name is Gardenia Partridge. I'm the entertainment director for San Diego LGBT Pride. I work with Fernando. I am in charge of booking over 125 plus acts for a 2-day weekend here in San Diego.
No big deal.
NBD.
Pardon me?
I was all no big deal.
No. Our attendance is about 51,000 people. We do run a 3-day event, including our Stonewall Rally event, the block party in Hillcrest. We have a majority of LGBTQIA artists and also strong allies to the community and people who are advocates for the LGBT community as well.
Erick.
I'm Erick. I'm a creative director here for a company called the Arms Group in San Diego. We have like restaurants, nightclubs. We manage other venues as well. And also, I've been a resident DJ here in San Diego for over 20 years. So I know my intro's not as cool as them, and I've worked with them, and they're amazing people. Next.
I think he's being kind of you're playing yourself down, dude. We'll talk about it.
All right.
Andy?
Hi, my name's Andy Murilles Coronado. I run a local events group and media company called the Travelers Club. We do events at a lot of venues that P right here are, and Justin Holt. We also do panels and workshops, creative workshops for the youth in summer called the Each One Teach One. They're all affordable, free for students, but we can discuss more of that later.
Pete?
My name is Pete McDevitt. I'm the lead talent buyer for Belly Up Entertainment. So we do all the stuff, obviously, at the Belly Up. We also book the majority of the shows at the Music Box, probably 90%, if not more. Then, we co-promote shows all over town with Observatory, House of Blues. We do all the booking for the Del Mar Racetrack. So yeah, just book a ton of shows.
So what I want to start with is let's take a step back. I know Jay talked about, I actually graduated college in 2009. I was playing electro bangers in nightclubs and going to school and working at House of Blues as an intern. And that was my 2009.
Wow. Back in 2009, that's actually when I first started raving. I attended my first rave. It was Scream at the World Beat Center.
Hey, same here.
Hey, yeah, I go way back. So, and I was still in high school, I believe. I was just living my dream. Never looked back. I'm still in the rave scene and the electronic music scene. So that's what I was doing. I was still a young gun, finding my place in the world.
How about you, Fernando, 10 years ago?
10 years ago, I was managing political campaigns for LGBT candidates. My background was in social justice, advocacy, and policy work. And that's how I ended up running the nonprofit that I do now.
And when did you start running the nonprofit? Like 3, 4 years ago?
I have been with San Diego Pride for 8 years, and I was just appointed the executive director a year and 3 months ago.
How was that connection made?
From being in LGBT social justice work to
Pride.
to Pride. So before I got to San Diego Pride, Pride was predominantly just a party and a parade. And the executive director at the time, who's a gay black man, son of a Baptist minister, came to this organization and said, as the new executive director 8 years ago, and said, I'm not here to just throw a party, I'm here to make this an education advocacy organization. So how do we merge this celebration with social justice? And he was familiar with my work, so he literally just picked up the phone one day, got a call out of the blue, and offered me a job to help him make that vision.
Was your work in San Diego, or were you?
Okay. Yeah, my work, I served as a statewide director and national director over the course of different years for organizations like the Victory Fund and, Equality California and Marriage Equality USA, and had been doing that for almost 20 years at this point. So 10 years ago, had asked, well, come help us, like, I have this vision, and I think you can be a part of making that happen. And so really,
where were you going to decompress though and dance? Was
sorry.
Gardenia serving you drinks at the Flame?
Oh yeah, no, Gardenia and I go back to Bourbon Street.
Bourbon Street, I miss Bourbon Street a lot. Okay, Gardenia, 10 years ago.
10 years ago, I think, 10 years ago, I'm looking at maybe 2000s, I was a VIP cocktail waitress at Ole Madrid. And we were one of the beginning places that started the VIP bottle service programs in the gas lamp.
Wait, where was Real Madrid? Was that the old below?
It was the old Boyer.
Oh, okay.
I come from about 15 years of industry, nightclub. I was a general manager at The Flame. I also bartended at Ole Madrid, a Montage Spin nightclub, and I am somebody who's worked in the community, the LGBT community, including Bourbon Street and Lay Lounge.
Eric?
10 years ago, I was probably DJing at Ole Madrid where she was working and doing probably graphic design for them. You know, I owned my own company for a while doing creative design for...
You did everyone's flyers, dude. Let's be real.
Pretty much, yeah. So that's what I was doing, and there you go. I did some work for him as well. Yeah. So I was just helping out and being there and being involved, you know, pushing electronic music to downtown San Diego, which, you know, I was fired for so many places for playing too much house music. It's come full circle now, you know.
Pete, 10 years ago?
10 years ago, I was 10 years into my talent buying career, so I was booking shows at a place called the Blue Note in a college town and a place called Columbia, Missouri. It was like 1,000 cap room, and, you know, it was like just booking shit that college kids wanted to go see, so, no.
Andy, you were like, what, 12?
Yeah, I was like 15, 16. I was like, Scarlett though, yeah.
Yeah, we're probably at the same raves, Hero, Sugar, Scream.
Like literally, yeah, I was spending my time going on Tumblr and going on, was it still MySpace or was it Facebook then? But seeing like flyers for Push Pop or like Scream.
Eric made those flyers.
Yeah, and when you're 16, everything looks huge. So I remember I used to go to North Park and go to the alleyways and they'd lead you into Queen Bee's, and Queen Bee's isn't that cool. But if you go inside an alleyway and you're 16 and you're sneaking in, or you think you are, it's like the most amazing thing ever. So
tell me a little bit more about, because I'm from Northern California. I moved out here 15 years ago, but I feel like the Travelers Club has a really cool connection to being from South County, like Chula Vista. It's something that I really kind of gravitated towards in your branding and your shirts and all that type of stuff. So how was it like growing up?
Well, I grew up in Chula Vista, and I think for the longest time, Chula Vista had that stigma where it was almost like East County, but it was Mexicans instead of white people. So, like, nobody really cared anything below the 54, and I still think that exists today where, like, if you talk to people who are in central San Diego, they think about Chula Vista, San Isidro, National City, and it's kind of like afterthought of San Diego. But I think it's changing a lot. And to me, it's important because a big part of San Diego is this, like, binational identity. So you have most of the South Bay, which is a very strong Filipino and Mexican community. I think it's important to like note that just as popular as that Navy statue that was the dude kissing on the chick in the Midway, like there's the Paradise Hills water tower, which is like an icon to a lot of kids growing up, you know? So I think it's important to highlight those things.
I think that translates in your brand for sure. I mean, I notice it. So I wanted to ask everyone, when was the time, and I'm interested in you, Fernando, as well. You're going out to clubs, you took this job on. When did you decide that, because I mean, now like you're a slave to the grave, or rave to the grave, you love raving, you're raving,
Yes.
I'm pretty much
Rave to the
rave
grave.
to the grave. And Pete likes to party.
I'm almost in
Pete's
the grave.
been buying talent since he could send email, right?
Yeah, we used to fax our office. Yeah. I started booking shows when I was like 18, so.
So for
Used to
you,
fax or press releases.
when did you what was the moment you decided that you wanted to dedicate all like your professional career to developing something that had as much of an impact as the Festival of Pride?
I can say that when I got the job offer from Dwayne, I was really hesitant to take the offer because Pride at that point really was just a party. And but it was his vision to say, like, how do you make this social justice? And he sat me down. We went to coffee, and he talked about the pre-existing infrastructure of the organization. And we talked it through, and he convinced me. He sold me on it. And we were not the year-round organization that we are now. Like, but I mean, I love music. I mean, I was always out at the bars. Gardenia knows. I actually studied music theory when I was a kid. I went to Performing Art Academy. So music's always been a part of my life. I started playing piano when I was 3. I sang, I play like 20 instruments. So music's near and dear to my heart. So the fact that I could use something that I cared a lot about, which was music, and use that as a vehicle to do what else I care about, which is LGBTQ social justice, was a rare opportunity. And I can say that in the last 8 years, we've built San Diego Pride into this international powerhouse that really does support these other Pride organizations in countries all over the world, and that we've become the most philanthropic Pride in the world. So it was a very rare opportunity. I'm glad I said yes. But if you would have asked me 10 years ago, would I think I was going to be here? Absolutely not.
What was the worst job that you've ever had to get into the game? I would ask Gardenia first. I think some people realize, or to preface the question, I think people see crowds of people and they automatically assume that fucking killing it, this guy's killing it, they're killing it, everyone's killing it. Like, dude, I'm crying inside right now. Like, I don't even want to do this. I don't want to be here. You have a bad show. There's no ticket sales. You fucking just want to go hide in the corner and you're just looking at your phone. I mean, there used to be no phones to look at. There'd just be an empty room. And like, we would call that feeling the burn. Like, you better stand here with me because we're going to be in this empty room together. But that was, and we've all felt it. And we've all had some pretty, I'm sure some pretty pointless jobs that we thought, but we had to do it to, I call it eating shit. Like, you have to have, I think that our generation, and I don't, like, we have a wide range of ages, but a lot of times I try to create opportunities for people and tell them, you're going to have to do some shit you don't really want to do. And then I think the ability to be tenacious and work through these things, knowing that I'm so much better than this, I should not be moving these tables, but I still move tables. And I think that it's a grittiness that you need to have to even, like, so for, like Fernando, like, there's only one San Diego Pride. Nobody else can have your position. There's only one talent buyer it's a pretty cool job, And so I just feel like if you can talk about kind of the struggles and kind of things you had to go through to get to where you are, Gardenia for sure.
Let's see. So I was the bar manager for Pacific Beach Bar and Grill. I survived for about 4 years. I took it for the team because they were looking for someone to do all their in-house bookings. And as we all know, PB is party town, 7 days a week, college kids. There's not a day when kids are not running around the streets in PJs, and they're not really into the music. And I came into this job thinking that we could probably make a change in the whole diversity of the nightclub, which didn't happen. So I was with the company for 4 years before they went out of business, and I did learn a lot just from Pacific Beach Bar and Grill, the capacity, what our net sales are, like how much money we're bringing in through those doors and so forth. On the booking talent part, not so much, because I felt like DJs basically were playing top 40 or whatever.
You're booking Erick Diaz.
So, and our big nights were like Taco Tuesday, and people were coming out for stuff like that. But I did learn a lot from the owners who were hands-on with their business. So after 4 years, I kind of just decided to go another direction.
That can feel like a lifetime, though. I mean, I did Fridays, Saturdays at Basement for 2 years, and it fucking worked me for sure. What about you, Erick?
Probably the worst job, but it wasn't that bad. It was the only job out of the music industry. I worked at Mervin's doing logistics only because I was probably like 17 or something. My computer broke, and I couldn't do any design work, so I needed money. And I worked at a record store at the time, but I spent my whole paycheck on records. Like, I never got paid, pretty much. Just took home records. So I needed another computer, so I worked like grave shift logistics from like midnight to 4 a.m. or something like that, just for about 6 months till I could afford a good computer. And that was it. That was the only worst job.
And then now you're just your boss all the time. You're your own boss. What about you, Andy?
I'm still working odd jobs and stuff. So, I mean, I'm not at that point where I'm established enough where I have like a huge business that's like self-sustainable like that. I'm hoping soon. But, I mean, I worked at DSW at the San Diego Zoo in order to make ends meet and to put the shows on. I worked at House of Blues, and I was getting paid like nothing, but it's still an amazing opportunity. I got to be able to like learn from a lot of great people like John Schalk and amazing talent buyers. So, I mean, I think at any job I've taken, it's been kind of worth it. So I wouldn't really call them bad jobs.
So my first job in the music business was mopping the floors and cleaning the toilets at the venue that I eventually ended up booking. It was mostly...
How long did you have to do that before you got the book?
It was only a year. They only made me
Only
clean the
a year.
toilets for a year. Yeah. I mean, my segue into booking was basically like, so when I was a freshman in college, I was working at that venue cleaning the floors just so I could get into shows for free, because I was a broke college kid and there's no way I was going to be able to afford to go to all the shows that I wanted to go to. But then at the same time, I had become, somehow as a freshman, became the chair of what was like the campus activities board for the concert booking stuff.
What school is this? What are you talking?
University of Missouri, Mizzou.
Dang. I don't know where that is on the map, to be honest.
Dude, it's right in the middle of the country. Like, if you threw a dart and hit like the center of the country, that's exactly where it is. But yeah, and then so the guy that owned the venue that I was, sweeping the floors at and stuff, we co-promoted a show on campus together because he basically needed me to get into this room on campus. It was actually Ben Folds 5. Yeah, isn't that funny? Yeah. And then, I like went back to St. Louis for the summer and like got a call one day at the beginning of August from the owners, like, hey, like when you come back to Columbia, I want to talk to you. Which, led to me dropping out of college, of course, and, just sort of just doing the damn thing. So, and it's funny what you were talking about earlier about empty rooms. I've learned more from empty rooms than I have from sold out shows. Yeah. I mean, that's really like the hard knocks of it, Yeah.
Especially with the amount of nights that you're doing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too. So I'm going to pass it over to Scarlett.
All right, and now it's time to focus on the present and to get to know you all a little better. And I want to start with Pete. I got a few questions for you. You've been working for Belly Up for 5 years now, and you were previously working at Columbia, Missouri. What is it that drew you to San Diego?
The Belly Up. I had never been to San Diego until my job interview. Mm-hmm. My perceptions of San Diego were basically Top Gun. Like, I didn't really know anything else about it.
Yeah.
And it's funny. It was I was standing on the beach watching the sunset, and it was before I had an offer. It was just, it was like, oh my God, if they make me an offer, I'm taking it.
California,
So,
man.
Yeah.
So I read in one of your
That's
interviews.
definitely an upgrade.
Yeah.
Missouri to fucking San Diego.
I've
You're
never
telling
been to
me.
Missouri, so I wouldn't know. But I read in one of your interviews that Belly Up resembles your previous job at Blue Note because they share similar independent booking plans and philosophy. What is it that you dislike about big concert corporations, and what draws you to independent companies?
I mean, it's kind of a hard question, and especially with what's happened recently in San Diego with Live Nation. But you know, for me, probably a lot of it was really instilled from my original boss, who was kind of my original mentor, because he had just like a real disdain for the whole thing that happened whenever Clear Channel bought SFX, and all of a sudden it was this giant conglomerate that was not only concert promotions but also radio, and it just really seemed like it was the wrong direction for things that are centered around arts.
Yeah.
And you know, of course, then eventually the government broke that all up. But that's probably like the original, like, kind of thought behind it, and also just like that DIY kind of attitude. You know, I just grew up listening to like punk and hip hop, and it was always just like, especially in the punk ethos, just like do it yourself.
Are those your
So-
favorite genres, music genres, punk and rock?
You know, I don't know that I like. One thing that I actually really love about booking shows is it's just broadened my perceptions of
You
music
get exposed
so
to
much.
all different genres.
Yeah, like when I
and
was
artists.
18, like I just wanted to listen to punk, indie, and hip hop. And then when I was like, I think I was actually still 18, I saw John Prine because I was working a John Prine show, and it just completely changed my horizons.
Your perspective.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, when I was 16, I was listening to Panic at the Disco all the time, and now I'm listening to Skrillex and whatever, all these artists. So it's great that you get exposed to all these different genres and artists. So what do you like the most about your current position? What's your favorite thing about your job?
You know, one thing that like all of us here really do is we make memories for people, and I think that's a really like special takeaway that you know, people in other career paths don't get to do.
Yeah, it's true.
And you know, not to say that any, you know, if you're an insurance salesman, awesome, that's great. Like, we need those things.
Entertainment is so important.
It's just so important, you know. It's like it's giving people an experience and giving people a memory, and you know, hopefully a good memory.
Yeah.
You never know, but.
And what is the most difficult aspect of your job?
Well, you know, trying to book like 50 or 60 shows a month is a lot of work. And, you know, there's a lot of different characters that, you know, different personalities, and sometimes all the personalities don't necessarily see eye to eye and everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably the most difficult.
How do you manage to stay organized with everything?
I have no idea. I do have a really good assistant, though, so that helps.
Yeah, I bet. So what do you think of the scene overall? Is San Diego producing good acts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of really great things going on in San Diego, especially, you know, a lot of the cool, like, independent stuff that's going on. You know, there's, in a weird way, a lot of people in the industry tend to think of San Diego as kind of like the stepchild of the West Coast. And I think that's changed a lot, even like in the short time that I've been here. You know, it just, there's still always going to be people that just skip playing the market for whatever
Yeah,
reason.
of course.
But, you know, it's just, it's,
We're rising.
what's that?
We're rising.
Yeah,
The
no,
rise of Music
exactly,
City.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And now I want to ask some questions for Andy. You strive to provide a platform for San Diego's alternative art, music, and media, and you also provide a sense of community with your events. What is it that makes your brand stand out from the rest?
I think that I value our brand as something that's not just events. I love doing events and everything, but I think I try to equally highlight like the community, cultural archival. I think that it's a very important thing. So when I see people throwing other parties, or when I see people doing like nonprofit work like the Aja Project in City Heights and stuff like that, all to me is very important, because if nobody's gonna highlight it, then nobody's gonna remember it later on. And I think one big problem in San Diego is our lack of cultural archival. You can't look too far back if it's not pop punk and see what the music scene was back in like the early 90s or the 80s, unless you're watching like Stratus nightclub videos on YouTube and stuff. But there's really nobody like who's keeping track of that. So I want to make sure that if there's somebody like our friends or me or whatever who's in these like random DIY shows, somebody's keeping track of them, somebody's writing it down, somebody's interviewing these people, so later on people can read back and be like, oh, that happened.
Yeah, definitely.
Because, you know, to me it's like, I look at like New York and downtown scene with like rap music in the 80s, it's like without Fab Five Freddy, you wouldn't have anybody who's connecting like the South Bronx to Manhattan and stuff without like, there'd be no Basquiat and stuff.
So do you feel like people care in San Diego? Does it make it harder or does it make it easier?
I don't care if people care, I care. And I know there's people
That's
like
what
me.
matters.
Yeah, so it's like, if I care, I know there's somebody else out there who cares because I can't be the only one. And I think the thing is you have to make them care because a lot of people, like you said, think of San Diego like it's Top Gun, but there's so much more to it than that. And I think...
What are your frustrations with, I mean, so personally, I feel like, you know, sometimes people might not appreciate that. Like, I appreciate the blog posts that you write. I read them.
Yeah.
And it takes time to curate thoughtful writing. People don't even fucking read anymore. Like,
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and I think that's the cool thing to me because it's like I know blogs have been dead since like 2011, but like I still like writing them, and I'm sure somebody still likes reading them. People say do digital content, we do videos and all that stuff, and I think that that's important because like you said, like frustrations, like I'm still 26, so I'm still not jaded. I still think what I'm doing matters in some sense. And maybe eventually you ask me in 10 years, I might be like pissed off and be like, man, fuck San Diego. But I've been doing this for a good 6 years, and I've been pretty happy with seeing the successes of certain events and seeing how other companies and brands are doing like-minded things. And I like seeing how venues like Music Box and stuff are coming up and doing cool stuff and working with people like me, because that's a big deal, you know? Like, I'm technically not even a professional, but I love having like meetings with the people who run Music Box or meetings at Courtyard at these actual professional venues that are giving people like me a platform to be able to do stuff. So I think that's really important for people to see, and that's what I think we do to make, to stand out, because there's a lot of people my age or younger who see what we do and are like, oh, that's so dope, we can do that too.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I was going through your website and I noticed that you also take kind of like an educational approach. And it can be challenging to talk about controversial topics. And even I've tried to do it in my show. I've talked about drugs and mental health, and it makes people really uncomfortable. And I see that you're reading pieces about politics, immigration, transborder culture, Chicano queer representation. Why are these topics important to you?
I think it's important to talk about this stuff, and I think it's a lot of brands don't talk about that kind of stuff because you don't want to be polarizing. You don't want to split your fan base. And right now I'm at the point where it doesn't matter if I split my fan base because my fan base is my fan base. So I could talk about what I want, and we can write about all the stuff we want, and we can have a position on like immigration issues, and I don't got to worry about what side of like my Republican fan base cares because I don't give a shit what they think. Can I cuss?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah we've already cussed many times here, no worries.
we're on sovereign land. Dude.
Yeah,
well, it's like,
there can be beep, beep.
Yeah, it's like we can write about what we want, and I know that, or at least I don't mean to sound like big-headed or nothing, but I think that we have a certain like demographic tapped in, and I think if we're able to talk about issues that matter to them in a voice that they're accustomed to hearing and it's accessible to them, and not talking in these like academic jargon and shit, like nobody cares about that. Like if you're gonna talk to somebody like that, you're being like pretentious. You don't really care if they know. You just want them to think you're smarter. But you talk to them like if they're your homie and you're like, this is what's happening. These are what these issues mean. This is what's on the ballot. This is what this local representative does. This is the things he's showing up to. And you give them that leeway into that world, they'll actually care. And like it's
you're
shown.
opening up your mind. You're actually like being genuine about what you care about.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's
that
not
makes a difference. It really does.
Exactly, and it's not to say that like we're trying to like mold people's brains. It's just like here's what's happening, and here's in a way that might be accessible to you. How you feel about it is how you feel about it. We just want you to have a stance.
Yeah, and I also observed that many of the artists that you featured are minorities, and I think it's amazing that you're giving them a space for self-expression. Is there a reason why you gravitate towards them?
Because he's from Chula Vista, dude.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. It's like growing up, I remember when I was 16 and I first started finding out about things, like when I thought about art shows in San Diego, it's like La Jolla, and you go to La Jolla and it's like wine and crackers and like white people. So that didn't make, I didn't feel represented. There was no identity that I could see myself in there. So I think it's important to have events where you highlight the people that compromise San Diego compose San Diego. Like, but you think about it, it's like, a lot of people think about San Diego as a very just like military or bougie, like
Beach town.
bad beach town and stuff. Like they think about PB and stuff, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of neighborhoods that don't get that kind of representation. City Heights is composed primarily of like
Hey,
Vietnamese
City Heights. I've been
refugees.
living there ever since I moved here.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's like the East African community. There's huge. You go to Southeast, we have an amazing African American community. You go down south, we have an amazing Latino Filipino community. And I think that once you add that cultural and arts perspective into those worlds, because nobody's asking if where the East African murals are at, but there's amazing ones in City Heights, like right
That's
off
true.
49th University.
I agree.
But we need to talk about it more. So that's why I want to highlight those things.
I really appreciate that. I think you're making a difference. And I just want to say congratulations.
I appreciate
And
that.
I read in one of your interviews that one of the reasons you created the Travelers Club was due to San Diego's lack of sense of community and identity. But I think San Diego is so diverse when it comes to their people, music, events, and the different communities everyone is part of. I personally found my sense of belonging in the electronic music community, for example. What was missing exactly that you're currently bringing to the table? Like, what is your ideal sense of community?
I think my ideal sense of community is that people are aware of each other, and I think that in our mission to provide that cultural archival and giving interviews to different scenes and different pockets of San Diego, you allow those different scenes to become aware of each other, and in that sense, you create that form of community, that bridge that otherwise didn't exist. And I mean, we have social media now. That's such a powerful platform to be able to use that to connect those different communities that otherwise wouldn't be aware of each other. Like right now, we live in a age where it's all about mixing and genre blending and like Coachellas and like Lollapaloozas and all that stuff. You know, it's all festivals. Like when back then it used to be so isolated and segregated. It's like we don't got to be that way anymore. And I think it's important and it's popular now to be able to mix those worlds. So I think that that's really important. And I almost like forget the question, but yeah.
No, you answered the question about like the sense of community. Like what
Yeah,
were you
yeah,
bringing?
exactly.
All right, well, thank you so much for sharing. I really
appreciate it.
appreciate that. And now I'm gonna go with Fernando.
Good questions.
Thank you. I did my research, you know. SDSU graduate, you know. So you worked at San Diego Pride for almost 7 years as a director of operations, and now it's been a year working as executive director. Congratulations, by the way. Have you made any changes or want to make new changes in San Diego Pride with your new role?
I think we've made them. Really, like, I think for a period of time there, the executive director who brought me on left, and the executive director who was there in the middle didn't get the vision of incorporating sort of LGBTQ voice, POC voice, women's voice, trans voice in the entertainers that we were highlighting. And it was really like reflected in our community. Our community sort of got really angry at the organization during his
How do they express
tenure.
the anger? How did they express that anger?
Online, not like coming to the event, and like bashing us publicly. Like, you know, all of a sudden, for a period of time, our entertainers got really white, really male,
Yeah.
really straight. And I thought that was the wrong direction. and so, you know, I have to give like props to Gardenia because she's been with us for almost as long as I have. And she's the one that's like driving that, like doing all those bookings, dealing with those like 200
And it's
personalities.
not fucking easy to
Yeah.
make everything balanced.
I
No.
couldn't even imagine.
She has to deal with me.
And so
When
the
she hires me.
change that I made, like the structural change was no less than 50% of our entertainers can be women. Like at least 50% have to be
Yes.
women. At least 50% of the entertainers have to be people of color. And at least one trans-identified entertainer on every stage every day.
That's awesome.
And so like,
And a challenge for sure.
and it's pain in the ass, like it really is. But she has done it so well. Like we work really. It's such a partnership between G and I to go through and find that emerging talent, that local talent, and those international artists that are willing to come. Because like you're dealing with a lot of struggles. But I think just setting that like initial path, like that was the structural vision. And then really tying that into, if you're gonna come to our event, you also can't just be some like just entertainer that's just doing your music. That's great. You have to have a social justice message. You have to connect, and you have to put that out through your platform as well, and commit to this organization that you legitimately care and put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, and use your platform to talk about social justice. Because if you're here and you're just trying to get money out of the LGBT community, I'm not here for that. We're not here for that. Like, go somewhere else.
I have a question. I mean, how do you approach that, Gardenia? I'm interested now. This is good.
So I work all year for, I'm a year-round staff member now. So we start off 16 months in advance looking through what we're missing off of the identities, and if it's people of color or if it's trans folks, is it our minorities that we're focusing on. So basically, I do a lot of research.
I was going to ask you that, like, how do you go about choosing your talent? Like, do they have to meet certain requirements or criteria?
So basically, for us, so there is a big application process for being booked at San Diego Pride. We basically made this huge jot form where you can apply. We take more quality over quantity now because our event is now top 5, 6 in the nation. We have over 300 plus people apply to the event, and we usually have a staff retreat after the event, and we go over everything, what went right, what went wrong, who did we not feature. Fernando and I and our marketing team have worked on a program where we facilitate, this is what we're looking for, this is, this is what I need, or I need to find a person of color, trans house DJ. Well, let's start looking, let's start digging. And I do a lot of, like, almost probably 2 months of work just looking for that right fit.
Do agents or managers give a shit? Like, what's that like? I mean, dude, because agents don't give a shit, I feel like.
It's hard getting them to give a shit.
Yeah,
or is it like, I mean, sometimes agents do get it, and then I tend to kind of gravitate towards them, give them more business, and they kind of understand, even with Weekender or with, all the talent buying that we're doing, we're small. It's, you're doing one festival, even if you're doing break-off events.
We get to work with some very meaningful talent buyers that are LGBTQIA and actually have a roster of straight allies or straight folks on their roster sheets. So sometimes going through YME or APA or whoever we're deciding to go through, I think right now the market is so great. They understand, San Diego Pride is coming through. Here's this beautiful entertainment deck. Here, review our lineup. Review what we've had in the past. Review our what the mission and philanthropy is. Like, how do we connect with this artist and know that this is going to be the right choice? Well, most of the agents are like, yeah, why wouldn't they do something like this? This is a great chance for them to be on an amazing platform and really be focused at the event.
And you're really, like, you're dealing with the buyers, you're dealing with the agents, you're dealing with their managers, you're dealing with their PR team, and, like, you all know this, and, like, it can fall through at any point in the game, and where you're trying to say, like, okay, are you for real, like, on board or not? Or is your manager just trying to sell you this way? Is your PR agent trying to sell you this way? Is the buying agent trying to sell you this way, but this isn't really who you are? So it really takes a lot of research.
What's an example of one that didn't work?
Oh, I can't tell you that, but...
Why not?
Do you think San Diego's music industry has improved when it comes to inclusivity to the queer community? What is the transformation you've seen through the year?
I think we have a long way to go. I've seen it get better. I've seen our work, like, drive that. We're the Pride that it's Vanity Fair and it's Paper Magazine that are announcing our headliner lineups. Like, it's not coming out of, KUSI or something like that. Yeah. So, like, I think that we've done a really good job. Our PR team's done a really good job in, like, helping to shift the visibility, like this national visibility about what we've been able to bring. But that was a really heavy lift. And where, like, just now maybe you're seeing some venues highlighting queer artists like King Princess and Kim Petras and, like, Troye Sivan are, like, coming out where, like, 10 years ago that would have been impossible for a queer artist to, like, break out in that way. And now we're, like, creating these spaces in different parts of San Diego to actually bring talent like that.
Yeah, because
but you don't see it everywhere.
No,
so
it can
we
be
have a long way to go. And for the most part, the artists who are being highlighted are still cisgender and white. Like, so you're not, like, even where you're starting to get some LGBT artists, you're not having a lot of highlight of the queer, trans, people of color.
Yeah, because it's such a heteronormative industry. I mean, it's really hard to break those patterns, but you are making a difference already, so thank you for that. Pride is the largest festival at Balboa Park, and it's been held there for a long time. How is it that you've been able to keep doing it there? And I would assume Balboa is full of regulation.
Oh, I like that question.
Yeah, so we're, it's a weird, long, technical policy story, but so San Diego Pride, like, right, when the event started in 1974, it was still legal to lobotomize gay men. Like, you could literally, like, lobotomize a gay man in 1974 in the state of California. And so in the original events, people showed up with paper bags over their heads because they were afraid for their careers, for their lives. Like, that's the origins of our event, right? Was just trying to claim space and visibility for our community. And so the way it used to work was the parade would end, and the march would end, and the march would end in Balboa Park. And there they would like start like talking about these issues on a microphone. And so that was like really all how it started.
Yeah.
And then over time, that like talking at a microphone said, oh, we're all here, so why don't we bring some booths and some tables? Oh, we're here, why don't we start playing some music? Oh, we're here, we're playing music, why don't we bring in another talent? And it grew, and so over time, we got grandfathered into the municipal code, the actual municipal code of San Diego. So San Diego Pride, like our organization specifically has its own policy within San Diego Municipal Code, which is why we are grandfathered into San Diego, or Balboa Park, and no one else can take that. So that's long, awesome. Weird history, but it's connected to the oppression of our community.
Thank you for sharing.
Do the neighbors complain?
All the time. G, you want to
tell me about that. I want to hear about that.
It's gonna be the most difficult thing of throwing such an iconic event. And you can answer whatever.
Well, the most difficult thing about throwing an iconic event, I think, is that everybody has in their mind, and you probably all experience this too, what your event should look like. And when it's something that's so deeply connected to identity, everybody has a way that they feel that San Diego Pride should be, should look, should cost. You know, our cheap tickets are $15. If you can't afford a $15 ticket, we're going to get you in for free. Like, and we have like VIP tickets, and so everybody has their idea of what those tickets should cost, and we're stealing money from the community, but we're the most philanthropic pride, and it's like a $15 ticket. So I think like navigating what is right or what feels right for our community is the most challenging thing, because being queer isn't one thing. We're every color, we're every nationality, we're every faith, we're every like economic class. And somehow trying to get everyone to just chill the fuck out for one weekend and like celebrate together and like push for diversity and inclusion like is so hard to please everybody.
Yeah.
The neighbors complaining is important, but is not the
what,
hardest
what is
thing.
that? What are those complaints look like? I mean, because I have an outdoor venue and it's like. But what are the conversations like? Are they city council meetings? Are they?
So thankfully our city is really on board. It doesn't matter their political party. The Republican mayor, the Republican city council members, the Democrats, they're all like supportive. They're on board. They understand the importance of our event. So we don't have to like go and like beg for ourselves anymore. Maybe we used to, but we don't have to do that anymore. The neighbors, you know, for the most part, it's thinly veiled homophobia. It really is. It's not about the noise. The people it's noise 2 days out of the year. The people who we really find that come and complain and try to cause trouble at the city, it's not people who actually care that it's a little loud for 2 days. It's people who are trying to use that noise as a way to mask their homophobia, and thankfully we have a city that understands that.
And speaking of identities, I read in the article that you sent me, it was really informative, about how your life exists on the intersections of marginalized identities and difficult experiences that have allowed you to carry out this work with a unique perspective on most people. And I assume you have really high levels of emotional intelligence and like really empathetic, and I struggle with that too. How do you take care of your mental health and stay strong and optimistic despite the challenges of life?
That's a great question, and I just want to share with folks, so I'm the child of immigrants. My father's side of the family, they all moved to the United States from Mexico to have a better life. They all worked in the fields. My dad loves to remind me that they worked in the fields so I didn't have to. Go dad, like nothing like Catholic guilt, like that's awesome. On my mom's side, her family immigrated to the United States from Eastern Europe and Russia. They were Jews who were escaping death and persecution. So I was raised with the stories of my family. I'm also a queer, Latinx, Jewish, non-binary, former homeless youth rape survivor. So like, there's a lot that I'm like, you know, I'm dealing with. And you know, you talk about the struggle and the hardest job. Like, I was a homeless kid on the street of Hillcrest because my family kicked me out because I was queer. And so I know what that struggle looks like. You know, I wasn't just born into privilege and an executive director out of nowhere. It was 20 years of struggling and doing the shitty, hard jobs. And I think, like, just know, like, that thing about, like, knowing that you're right, knowing that you can maybe make a change and maybe make a difference. And, like, what you were saying earlier really resonates with me. Like, 10, 15, 20 years ago, like, no one cared. Yeah. And now we're like this $3.5 million organization. Like, it took time and hard work, and how you take care of yourself at the end of the day is like, one, this job is so rewarding. My team is fucking incredible and brilliant to work with. And so at the end of the day, like, I don't wake up and go like, oh man, I gotta go to work. Even if it's hard, like, I'm like, oh man, I get to go to work.
You're passionate
and like,
about
you get home and you're like, oh wow, that was a rough day. And, you know, I just chill out on my couch and like enjoy that I get to, the privilege of doing what I get to do. And you have to take that time for yourself, because you're not just putting on a celebration for people and like making these memories and putting on this incredible social justice minded event. It's hard and it's taxing, but it's also rewarding, and you gotta find your peace and able to continue doing that.
What is the most valuable thing you've learned about the industry with your years of experience?
Patience.
Oh man.
I mean, I'm still learning it. I think we're all learning patience all the time. Hopefully we are. But patience and just letting things go. Like, we'll work so hard on like the biggest acts, the biggest names, like you wouldn't believe who is like here, and then like it can all fall apart and it can all crumble, and you just sort of have to roll with it. You know, you put 4 months into a contract and then it just like, it doesn't show up. You know, and they're telling you tomorrow, or you have this incredible artist and then they bail at the last minute. And so, you know, you're putting on this massive things, there are a million moving pieces, all gonna go wrong. And like, if you can just figure out how to stay calm through all of that and just roll with it, you'll
just
be
keep going.
so much more sane at the end.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.
Gardenia, do you have any funny or horror story about dealing with a difficult artist? Just on a lighter note.
Local, or are you talking about headliners?
Erick Diaz.
One.
I don't know. You know, I feel like everybody, exactly what they said at the end earlier, everybody has a personality. It's their management groups. Sometimes it's not even the artist, because the artist is in so many moving pieces, and it's their PR, it's their the booking agents, it's, you know, you have the high diva or the dramatic ones, and then when you meet the artist, you're like, oh my God, I'm like,
they're
hey,
so nice.
How are you? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I've worked with, I work for 5 different prides now, and so I get to see the unfold of how some of them are at other places, and it's unfortunate because we've had them with us and they've not been pain in the asses, I guess is that what I want to say. And then when you see them at other festival events and you're like, wow.
Yeah, like, I know what you did. Yeah.
How did that change overnight? And no, I'm not booking you again. So.
Right. Yep, you got the say, not booking again. What is the most your involvement in San Diego Pride?
For me, I think when I came on board 8 years ago as a volunteer for San Diego Pride, I saw San Diego Pride in a direction that was just very, it wasn't like our community wasn't going to the events, and people complained about the artists and the lack of like diversity, and I think overall I've been able to come to the table as a woman, and I'm the only female in an entertainment director position in the nation for regional prides, and I value every day when I go to work. It's a struggle, obviously, right?
Of course.
I make the best of it every single day, and I'm so proud that I'm able to work for such a local nonprofit as San Diego Pride.
Definitely, and about being a woman in the industry. What are your thoughts on women's representations in the music industry?
I feel like it's very man-driven. I feel sometimes that because some people think I'm a woman that I'm just you're easy to turn me over, or hey, you don't know what you're talking about, and yes, I do, because I work with tons of different
Yes,
Bitch, I worked at PB Bar and Grill for 4 years.
I work with tons of different selected buyers and agents, and I'm able to go around to 5 different prides now. And I work back of house. I do a lot of logistical work and production, and it's all male driven. So I feel that I've taken some grand steps at San Diego Pride to be somebody in a position as an entertainment director and move this into a woman's direction.
Yes.
And help some other entertainment, managers get to the level that I'm at now.
What advice would you give women that are trying to make it in this industry?
Keep doing it, no matter what anybody says. It's not just because I'm a woman and you're a male. I have the amount of experience as a male-driven person. Yes, we work hundreds of hours. I'm in the office day and night, but you know what? My impact is, hey, I need to take an extra day to come into work and make this happen. I think it's manifesting and saying, this is what I'm doing, and sometimes along the way we make mistakes, but otherwise I really think that keep pushing as a woman in this industry, because there is a lot of women in different aspects of it who own agencies or helping youth and so forth. I just think at the helm we still have so many more steps to go.
Thank you for sharing, and I'm gonna take this to heart. I appreciate that. Erick, are you ready? What is your role as a creative? Ooh, can you hear me? 1, 2, yeah. What is your role as a creative director for RMD Group?
Well, it's a little bit of everything from some interior design to deciding what the advertising looks like to helping with the experiences,
Can you do a preface and tell what RMD Group is?
Yeah, so we own and manage and run restaurants and nightclubs like Rustic Root Sidebar. We're opening up a new spot in August called Huntress. It's like 4 stories, rooftop. We manage the float venue at the Hard Rock Hotel and a bunch of other little things.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
You're doing a little bit of everything?
Yeah.
What is it that keeps you motivated or inspired?
What was that?
What keeps you motivated or inspired?
Just like art. I mean, I like, everything from, fashion to music to
West Coast Weekender.
things.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not DJing here, but I came and partied here
I think I can
Yeah,
talk to the
look.
talent buyer.
last night. Like, I love this stuff,
That's great.
Yeah.
I feel like there's competition when it comes to throwing events in downtown and anything in downtown, right? So why would anyone want to work with RMD Group? What makes it special?
Well, we've been doing it a long time, so we do it pretty well, and we're always open to working with other people. I know that we've had meetings with Justin to work together on things that hasn't worked out yet, but I'm sure it will. And we want to do new stuff and not just like the same open format. Sidebar, for many years, I worked there. I think we first opened Sidebar 14 years ago, and I DJ there. They fired me because they didn't want house
Their
music.
loss.
They didn't want house music. And then about 2 weeks ago, we started our first full house night with Hood Politics,
Nice.
which are, those guys are doing amazing stuff here in San Diego.
Awesome. And according to your Facebook, you're an artist, poet, author, and music philosopher.
Oh, that was just bullshit.
Oh, well.
That's just fun.
It's a fantastic combination of identities. I was going to say, what's your philosophy? What are your...
I can't write a bio, so I think I ripped that off from
Oh, okay. I'm like, I want to know these deep thoughts of this guy. He's a music philosopher. What is it?
I found that somewhere. It was like a mix between Johnny Cash bio and somebody else.
Oh,
What's some?
It wasn't that deep.
What's one of the branding that you're most proud of that you've done? Because I'm a fan of your graphic design.
The
What's
most what?
Yeah. What's a brand that you've worked on that you're most proud of? Because you're a graphic designer as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've worked with tons of artists, from like Sasha and John Digweed to like Seven Lions and like I can't even think of it right now, but probably well, one of the biggest projects I worked on was Steve Angelo. I designed his logo years ago. You know, from the Swedish House Mafia, probably the biggest.
I love them.
One of the biggest groups.
Yep.
One of the biggest groups. Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah, and then I've worked with tons of other people from, you know, like somebody calls me and say, I need a logo, you know, I'll design it for him, you know.
All right, I
And
know who to call now.
Work within people's budgets and things like that, you know.
Right, awesome. Will you work with my college student budget?
Of course.
Awesome. As a veteran DJ of 17 plus years, what event has made the biggest impact in your life?
Event?
Yeah, any event that you've played at, like,
Oh. Biggest impact. I mean, I can't even think. There's too many events to name, you know, from small underground things to, you know, now being a resident at Omnia, you know, and being a resident of Bang Bang at the same time, the total opposites, right?
Yeah.
Big major nightclub to like a sushi restaurant with cool house music.
I
So-
love
What's that
Spot.
vibe like now?
What's that?
What's the vibe like now in San Diego at those places?
The vibe?
Yeah.
Well, Omnia, of course, is just crazy, like young people just raging out.
Yeah, it's
Right.
pretty wild.
Yeah, and
Walk there.
yeah, and then Bang Bang, you know, you get that cool underground culture with like a little more hip vibe. Not that Omnia doesn't get hip people, but you know,
It's a different
it's a bit,
experience.
A bit more commercial, right?
Yeah, Omni is a lot more. It's more of a touristy destination.
Yeah, 100%.
And what are some of the challenges that come with your job, with your current position at RMD?
Challenges. Well, I think I did this interview a couple months back, and I think one of the guys, I invited him to come out and see me play at Omnia, and he was really surprised and expected something different. I think he expected like a open format DJ or something like that. So just getting people to not just think about like other things, you know, because I'm not that quote unquote Omnia DJ, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'll bring underground music to a major nightclub. So just
So what
getting
are-
people to think outside the box, you know?
What do you think are the difference between like a mainstream and underground? You know, I feel like there's like this battle, like, especially here in San Diego, like that people in the underground scene, they're just like, I hate mainstream, and it's just kind of like politics, you know? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I mean, I first started going to raves in the, mid 90s, and that was like real underground to me, right? But, I didn't consider it underground. We were just a bunch of youths going to these things that weren't, it wasn't like a concert, it was something like that. So like, I love to mix it all, and that's why I do things. I play downtown, and, I'm speaking here today and things like that. So
Do you still get excited to play at the clubs?
Do you still get nervous?
do I get nervous?
Yeah.
No, I don't get nervous anymore, but I love it, like, I haven't been nervous in a long time. I've, since probably my first gig, I think, was terrible.
Terrible. What are some of the positive aspects of San Diego's electronic music scene?
Some of the what?
The positive aspects.
Positive aspects. Well, I think electronic music. Well, when I first started, I played. One of my first residencies was Montage, and at the time, Montage was really like, I think maybe like 70% gay at the time, and dance music really came out of the gay culture, I feel,
Yeah, it did actually.
in San Diego.
House and
So
techno.
like, yeah, I mean, that's
Shout out Soleil.
exactly. I think there's been a positive movement in being open. Electronic music is like open to new things.
It is.
I think that's a great positive thing.
Anything that you want to share that no one knows about you, like a fun fact?
I'm Mexican.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Okay, I got one last question for all of you, okay? It's really serious. Who's going to win Game of Thrones?
They're all
Don't
gonna
tell me.
die.
Bro, I never seen one episode. It's just boring.
We'll get into that later. All right, I want to jump into there's very unique business structures, I think, that we can all see on the stage right now. So you have the nonprofit. You have pretty much a small, it's a hospitality group. You got just bootstrap, no funding. And then we also have a great support team with, the belly up as far as talent buying. So it's like, I want to kind of talk about like where the fucking money at? Like how do you guys run, like it costs money to produce these events. And I'm very interested on the nonprofit side. It still costs money to produce events. Maybe talk about like how does your fundraising work? How has the infrastructure kind of been built? I think that a lot of people in the industry kind of don't know how to have a career in a landscape like this or in something like RMD Group. Like I don't know how that works. I think it's really cool. And also, with talent buying as well, you need to be able to have money to pay these artists, and you need to be able to float those things and be able to grow the brand and keep the doors open and keep those rooms booked. And then on your end, and probably mine as well, you're basically kind of doing one-offs and trying to build those relationships with agents, but the money sometimes doesn't really seem to come from anywhere. And so how do so let's start with you. Like what's your approach when in talent buying? How'd you throw your first show? Where are you at right now?
Well, we did our first show in 2014, and I mean, at that point, we were doing warehouse shows, so it took maybe like $1,500 to do at the time, and that's just money that's like, all right, I know 15 people who can all give me like $100, let's do that, and then we'd pay them all back at the end of it. Luckily, those shows did pretty well enough to the point where we could start leveraging our like relationships with venues after that, where people kind of caught on like, oh, these guys are doing cool shows here. Do you want to do something now? We did it a long time at Hard Rock at Club 207, and then we started doing them at House of Blues. And through that point, I've been kind of navigating through venues. So right now we do a lot of events at Spin, or we did one at Music Box recently. I've been lucky enough to the point where I've had a large group of people who believe in what we do that would give us money enough to be able to do stuff. Now we've gained somebody in the last year that's been able to provide more funding for our events. But I also realize that like I have a lot of friends who do events at a smaller scale that struggle with finding funding for it, and a lot of people are really just working jobs so they could spend all their money doing events. And if it goes well, it goes well, and if it goes bad, then they're not doing another event for like another 2 years because they're broke.
Done.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a really difficult position to be in, especially when you don't have that footing where you can take risks. I'm still trying to navigate my way out of the spot where like I want to be able to book people that I think are very impactful artists, and at the same time I also realize I can't book everybody who I want because somebody's going to cost me $10,000. There's going to be 4 people there, so I'm not going to make my money back. But I can do shows that I know are going to be successful that I might not necessarily love, but I can use those shows as a leverage point to be able to do those other shows that I believe in. And then, at a certain point, I trust that it's going to level itself out, and then I could do stuff that I really believe in. But
yeah. I mean, and the synergy with Pete and Music Box, I think, is a good example of harnessing local. I don't know, what would you call it?
Yeah, I think it's strategic partnerships. I think, obviously we've done a lot of stuff with you at the Music Box through the Deep End stuff, and then with the Mad Lib show you guys just did. I think some of the part of it for me with like those sort of strategic partnerships that we can do is like, in a lot of ways that kind of makes my life easier. Because when you're doing, so many events throughout the year, like, Belly Up, there's times where we'll be open for 3 months straight with a show every night. Like, it just gets gnarly, and there's only so much bandwidth that you can have to execute all that stuff. So that's where, working with, local partners that have a vision and have a plan.
Caswell's a great example.
Yeah, Caswell's great. I talk to Tim Mays like every day. It's funny, when I first started at the Belly Up, like the Belly Up wasn't necessarily doing things outside of the Belly Up very much. They were mostly just like looking at, occasional like corporate clients and stuff like that for essentially booking commissions. but like now we'll go put a show in the Soda Bar or Casbah, like just because if it's an artist that we believe in, like we want to help them develop in the market and do all that sort of stuff. So
When doesn't it work? I mean, because even for us to put together, what we did, obviously, like the numbers sometimes just don't work when we do these shows. And personally, I feel in our organization, we kind of do it out of necessity, out of creative necessity. Like, I have to do art. I have to create these events. Like, I'm very, very thankful that I make a living out of it, and we work really hard to do that. But I see so many missed opportunities, I think, and I think Erick has probably seen a lot of people in the industry, Gardenia. Like, it's difficult to kind of stay afloat, but I think that these partnerships and organizations have definitely helped my organization develop and connect the dots with you and try to just I just want to partner straight up on like courtyard shows. Like, I just feel like we can do what do you think what's that like wall between a bigger promoter, like even like Live Nation and Belly Up is probably doing a lot of shows. Like, what's a challenge to make those more relationships like that happen, and why don't they work?
you mean like more
Like partnerships like this, like doing shows.
just with sometimes I think sometimes people like maybe something doesn't work the first time and people give up, which I think is just a totally wrong approach to take. Because I mean, if like the first show I ever booked, there was probably 15 people there. It's like if I'd given up after that, like here I am, probably 10,000 shows later. And I think part of it too is sometimes when things don't work out financially on one event, like that can be stressful on those relationships. And I think one philosophy that I've always tried to just have is like, let's just keep moving forward. Like let's not let these little bumps on the road prevent us from getting to the destination we're trying to get to.
But also, I think we should note that having even the opportunity to do that because of your organizational infrastructure in the Belly Up, versus someone like Andy, like it's a mind fuck sometimes to lose 3 Gs, on a show. You're like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. I mean, I feel like you.
I mean, it still makes me
like,
sick
I want
to
to
my
do another
stomach.
show over there.
Like, even when I first started booking shows, like there was times where I would be the dude bartending at the venue for the show that I booked and counting out my tips at the end of the night to meet the guarantee. And I don't. Think
And is that sustainable though? Like, that's what begs the question. Like, is something, is there an opportunity that's missing with the venue and said promoter? And are there certain steps that we can try to take to make it work better?
I don't know that I know the answer to that. I think the one thing that the venues have that work to our advantage as a venue is all these sort of ancillary revenue streams, whether that be ticketing,
FMFs,
or exactly, and all that sort of shit. So.
I have a question for everybody. So like from my perspective, I'm more, I guess it would be like independent. So when you guys do your events at such a large scale, successful scale, and I'm assuming you guys have your email inboxes full of people like, hey, can I get an opportunity? Can you put me on? Blah, blah, blah. Like event companies and promoters are like, it's like a run-of-the-mill thing. There's like thousands of them. So I'm sure you guys are jaded to the point where you don't really care too much to look out, not knocking you guys at all, but saying like, what do you guys look for in, let's say, local partnerships? Like, I value that a lot of the talent buyers that like I work with, like Justin or like Steve at Kava Lounge or Andy at Space Bar, like these are people who like I consider like friends and stuff now. So what do you guys look for in order to forge those local partnerships with promoters who are, I guess, establishing themselves?
I think it's really just a matter of if somebody's gonna hustle. It's like I don't, I can't say this for every venue, but I'm not the type of talent buyer or programmer that's just gonna like let somebody come in and rent the room, and I'm not the dude that's just sitting there collecting a rent check. I want it to be a partnership and not just A, B, sort of you are the you are the promoter, we are the venue. You know, I want it to be something where it feels like we're all in it together. And you know, it's always a little bit difficult at first, like when you're first establishing a new relationship, just because you don't really, you know, you might not even know the person. You know, it might just be somebody that starts from an email or starts from just a call out of the blue. So yeah, it's really, in a weird way, like I feel like there's like a gut instinct to it, you know? Like,
Also just time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like-
I ask because I'm genuinely curious because like I feel lucky enough that I've established a certain relationship with a lot of venues and stuff. But like I'll still send Tim Mays an email once a month hoping he'll reply, and one day he will. But
Dude, I bother Tim Mays all the time.
They,
I even drove out to Pappy's and Harriet's once, and he's just like, dude, what do you want, bro? I was like, you're killing it.
yeah, like Fernando, like what
Work
do you
with me.
what do you look for in like local partnerships, and is that something that's important to SD Pride?
Well, so I'll answer both questions because they're sort of connected. That for the longest time, people didn't want to be connected to the LGBT community, right? They want like they don't want
What's
to
the
sit at your
timestamp on that?
they
Like
don't
5
wanna
years
sit
ago,
on your
10 years
table,
ago?
Like, I mean, there's not a timestamp, right? It's like slowly but surely, like people come along over the years, and for the longest time, it was really hard. And now we've built the organization, the reputation, the work, the philanthropy, that earned media, where we're getting pursued, and major artists are coming to us, and of course, all our local artists are coming to us, and you know, maybe 300 to 400, sometimes 800 people a year actually fill out that application. Thousands of emails, and how do you break through that? There's almost no way to break through that. Like G and her team, like we'll process all of those applications. We'll research, we'll look through all that music, but it's hard. Y'all start looking the same after a while, and so it's really about, I think, we only have 8 staff. We put on an event for 300,000 to 400,000 people, so it's all volunteers. We have 3,000 volunteers. G has a ton of volunteers on her entertainment team that like review and scout and manage those teams and the stages. And so really for us, it's about listening to our own community members. Those 150 volunteers, almost 200 volunteers who work all year round to make our event happen, we listen to them. They tell us like, hey, there's this great new artist, they're doing this. It's about like listening to your own community, and they'll tell you like what's coming through. If someone's authentic, if someone's real, someone's hitting the local scene or hitting the international scene in a real authentic way, like that's what permeates through, because we're gonna hear it from the people who are actually engaged in our organization. Like if you show up out of nowhere and just say like, oh, I've got this great new person, they're amazing. Like, yeah, everyone's got a great new person, everyone's amazing, but like, are you doing it? Are you real? Are you authentic? Are you actually social justice minded? Are you blowing smoke up my ass? And
Do you think that, so you're saying there is a rise in maybe not authentic artists that are trying to utilize that platform?
I think people will
Gardenia's
always
like,
see
yeah.
opportunity and just like, hey, now I'm ready to engage, when before we weren't. And you know, and it's a struggle too, because like we're competing against the big boys. Like we don't see ourselves as the big boys. You know, like whether it's Kaboo or Coachella, like even CrossFest, like we got a $15 ticket. We are a community who has been economically marginalized and discriminated against. You know, there's this myth that queer people have a lot of money. Like we don't. We've been oppressed. Like we're not employed. We're not educated at the same rates as other folks. And so, you know, I can't go out and like some of these other events have a $150 ticket. Like I can't do that. And so you're balancing this act of, how do I get a top talent person in who's going to be an iconic draw, but understands what we're all about enough to not charge us what they're charging Coachella, because we would never be able to do that. At the same time, you have queer, brown, trans people who are like, you got to pay those artists. Like you got to pay artists what they're worth, and you got to pay local artists what they're worth. And you know, I'm not here to just like give you exposure. I'm not here to like be that dick. You know, I'm like, no, like let's pay you what you're worth, but you also have to be like in it for the LGBT community. G, would you add to that?
I think you basically covered it all. I think with some of like the promotional or like the promo parties or like the, some of the events that go on in town. They're like, hey, Gardenia, can we borrow the logo to throw a dance party? And it doesn't fall in line with the mission or so forth. Or someone's like, hey, we're doing this underground party at this place. How do you feel about letting us use the logo? Well, the logo, I mean, we're basically talking about our nonprofit. Are we talking about underground parties? Is this what is our mission or what we've structured so long to do? And then the party doesn't go right because they borrowed the logo. So basically,
Quality control.
quality control on what we want to do. Also, we do yearly signature events throughout the year, which besides the charity event, San Diego Pride Festival, we do Out at the Park. We do Del Mar Fair. We also are now in a partnership with USD with the rugby game, where we put in our entertainment and so forth. And we work with a lot of different nonprofits on the smaller end who'd like to get the connections of artists that we use. So I mean, I work with 10 different groups here in San Diego that are like, hey, Gardenia, how do we get a hold of so-and-so? And I'm like, well, here's the information. I can help you facilitate and see how you guys can work that out with the artist. So.
Like, all the pride organizations around the world are connected, and there's almost 2,000 of them. And so I can tell you, like, almost anywhere around the country, and especially in the West Coast, if people, and definitely in the region, if people are looking for a queer artist, they're calling her. Because they know that she vets and like you're legit, like you actually care, and she'll tell how it is. So if you come in and you try to play us or you treat us like shit, like whatever, like she's gonna know, like, because that's her doing that work, and then everyone else is gonna know. And so she's very well respected. I cannot say enough about Gardenia.
Are you able to get funding from San Diego Tourism Authority?
SDTA won't fund us because we're in the summer. They don't need
because
us.
it's already busy.
Yeah, they're like, we don't need you, yeah.
And then can you talk a little bit about how your infrastructure is financed? Is it a lot of sponsorships? Are you talking ticket revenue? Is it?
So it's shifted a lot over the last few years. Before, it was about 30-30-30. It was like sponsorship, ticket sales, beverage sales. And so we redid our ticket structure recently to still keep the ticket prices low, but we added some VIP tickets. And so now, like when I started, we were bringing in about $200,000 in ticket sales. Now we're at $1 million in ticket sales. That's a lot of work when you're doing $15 tickets, by the way. So just like,
Congratulations.
Okay. But the other part of that too is because we have expanded the philanthropic side and the education advocacy side, the doing real social justice work, that actually opens us up to diversify our income streams by pursuing grants. And so we're actually able to go and do other funding. So talk about being a binational community. We put on the first binational conference called Orgullo Sin Fronteras, and that's actually funded by the Department of State. And so it's really like finding those other ways to do the real work the rest of the year that's diversifying the income streams. And as the event has increased in caliber, we're getting way, way more money from those ticket sales, because when I started, we had 11,000 people come to the event. And now, like G said, we got 45 to 51,000 people coming every year.
Do you feel like, and I think I experienced this as well, it's like if the scope of your event isn't at I don't know what the fucking number is. It's just like, do people just not care as much as far as when you're trying to go after these grants and sponsorships? And, what has your experience been in developing that? I mean, because it's a huge driver of these large events. It's not cheap to produce these events.
Right. So I think there's a few factors there. One, we don't lie about our numbers.
And you're a nonprofit, you can't lie about your numbers.
Right. Well, a lot of them do. And just being real, a lot of different organizations around the country lie about their numbers. They inflate their numbers, and then that makes it harder initially for the smaller folks to really gain ground, because this company's going to say oh, well, they say they have 500,000 and you only have 300,000. But our numbers are independently verified, they're independently vetted, and that was a really important investment for us, because we're a huge open space event. So like it's hard to verify those numbers. You have aerial photography and city verification, and we go through this whole external like process with San Diego State University's research department. So we actually do these independently verified numbers. And what we found over the years is these big corporate sponsors who were saying like, oh, well, we're gonna go to New York, we're gonna go to LA, because yeah, San Diego just gets passed over like so many times, like we're the stepchild, whatever. Over the years, they've realized like, oh, well, we're gonna come in small for you, like we're gonna come in a small sponsorship. And over the years, they've realized, like, wait, our brand activation does better when we're in San Diego than these other cities. And we're like, right, because we're not lying about our numbers, and everybody else is. So that took time. And now that helps us because we're able to turn away these companies and corporations that want to, like, now they all want to come. Before, we had no corporate sponsorship.
Yeah, and the acquisition, I mean, I think people should, I really didn't understand the acquisition and maintaining a sponsorship is a full-time job.
Oh, yeah.
It's so much work.
There is a full-time person who does that, or director of philanthropy. There's 80 corporations now who give us funding. It's over $500,000 from corporate sponsorship. And that's like, I mean, that's a ton of relationship work, but now we can say like, oh, you're a terrible company doing awful things in the world, like we don't want you. Like we can say no to your money because you're messed up. Like, and that's a place of privilege that we got to be, but it's 45 years of work to get there.
Interesting, thank you. Let's see, we have about 30 minutes, we're good on time. Does anyone have questions? Is anyone gonna ask some questions? Let's do, I wanted to bring it in and talk kind of about the local music scene. I think that in I don't know, even when I was in college, I was really interested in developing, I wanted to put my roots down in San Diego, and I love this place. I didn't think about moving to LA, and I thought that the people around me were really creative, and I wanted to create opportunities for them. But I've had a lot of friends that moved to LA because they thought that San Diego wasn't the spot. Like they didn't think that there was going to be growth here, and it's been a challenge. You know, after opening a venue, doing the deep end with this little thing here we got, the West Coast Weekender, I see so much potential, and I kind of wanted to get your guys' input on, I mean, I look around the room, and obviously you're a new homegirl, yours is a new guy, but like Erick is, I've known you for, well, I mean, I look around the room, Chris Herrera and even Vaughn been doing printing for us for over 10 years, and it's just like, it's a really cool community, and we've all helped each other sustain, and I want to figure out how to catapult us with local artists that are making good, like we need to have solid music. Like why are we not like Austin? Why do we not have that aura around San Diego? And kind of like, what's your perception actually too, Pete, because you're, you know, kind of and now you're knee deep in the San Diego scene. Do you see large differences or challenges in the San Diego local music scene? And you know, do you ask yourself why? Like, is there even a band that's from San Diego that can sell out your room?
Rocket from the Crypt, Pin Mac, Chon is doing really well for themselves. You know, I don't know, it seems like I might be totally off base here, but it almost seems like San Diego's proximity to LA is both a blessing and a curse.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Because we're so close to LA.
We're in the middle of
all these
TJ too and LA.
Labels and, you know, these booking agencies out of Los Angeles.
It feels like that's an excuse, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've done pretty well.
I mean, I want more for the city.
But it's like, sorry to interrupt anybody, but it's like a thing where, I mean, it's not to say that there's nobody successful that's coming out of here. It's just, I think it goes along with what I'm saying about the whole cultural identity thing. Like, if you're leaving San Diego, you blow up in LA, you're going to be like, oh, you're going to change your Twitter bio to say I'm from LA because that's what you want to claim. But that's not to say that it can't change or people will be proud to be from San Diego. There's like Beach Goons, who's a band from Logan Heights, and they're like amazing. They're playing festivals and stuff, and like they take like $200 to play a warehouse show in San Isidro, but they're still doing amazing things, and they love the community and they claim San Diego.
And actually, one thing that's cool with those dudes is the guys that put out the records, the Grandview guys, are based in North County. Unfortunately, the guy who's kind of the head of it, at least with dealing with the Beach Goons and our portion of the label stuff, he did just move to LA.
Yeah.
There it is.
That was mostly because of his wife's job. But yeah, like a band like Beach Goons, like to see like a just super rad band come out of South County and like just really be doing shit. I mean, they were just on that whole tour with Swimmers and the Regrets, and you know their show. They're just great.
Yeah, no, exactly. So like the Beach Goons or like Waves, you know, like Waves is huge, and they'll I don't know if they'll sell out Observatory still, but like they're amazing. Or like even an electronic scene, like OK played Coachella this year. I went to high school with that kid, so it's like it's not to say that like San Diego scene is lacking in terms of big acts. I just think the way that they claim it afterwards is like, yeah, Drake claims Toronto. You think he still lives in Toronto? Like he lives in LA or New York. You know, but it's because he claims his hometown, and that's what makes it seem like, yo, Toronto's dope, or San Francisco or whatever is dope. Like, if people...
And I think in a weird way, too, part of it is, like, people spend too much time comparing San Diego to other cities. You know, San Diego's never going to be Nashville.
Yeah.
It's never going to be Austin. It's never going to be Los Angeles. It's never going to be New York. You know, I think a lot of it just has to do with everybody that's in this room just helping kind of raise the scene up and just make the scene happen. And, you know, whether that be through underground parties or the shows that I'm doing or the events like these guys are doing, it's like, you know, it's like all of us together, that's what makes San Diego work, you know? And I think
it's still new, you know, even though some of us have been doing this thing for 25 years or whatever, but it's still new. So, like, maybe your question in 10 years from now, you know, that question won't exist, right?
Yeah.
You also have to take into consideration like the way media portrays LA in those big cities, you know. So everyone wants to go to LA. Everyone thinks they're gonna meet an artist or whatever, you know. That's another big factor, and also social media,
I mean,
how it
that's
affects
like the Hollywood story.
Yeah,
right?
and also the stereotypes of San Diego and the whole scene. You know, that also
What are some of the
plays-
stereotypes
Yeah, can you share some of the stereotypes?
of the San Diego
Isn't there like
scenester?
there's like a SNL skit about how San Diego is, and it's like two dudes who got like what is it, like Hurley hats on and like they're Ruka fitted, like where it's like bros, and all I talk about is like, dude, yeah, went to the beach today, how was it? Sick. All right, dope. And it's like, that's
Fire.
the news. Yeah, like that's what people think about it. But I mean, that's just because people haven't really talked about what's really happening here. So I think that's like the national idea, but I mean, there's a lot more.
And also like the audience, like the festival goers, do you think they're just trend followers? Are they even educated about music?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like, I look at festivals like Kabu, and if anybody here has relationships with people from Kabu, I'm sorry, but like, I don't, like, the lineup is trash. Like, it's really garbage. So, like, that's like what my idea of what people think
I'm
San
on the
Diego's
lineup.
idea of music is. Like, all right.
Erick Diaz plays Kaboo every year.
Yeah, right. Like, the thing is, like, though, we used to have, like, street scenes. Street scene's crazy. Like, MGMT, Justice, Kanye West, Beastie Boys. Like, that was dope. And that was in the middle of the Gaslamp. Like, that's super dope. And now hearing that, like, Wonderfest is coming, and they're trying to, like, rekindle that flame that street scene had. And I believe Belly Up's working, like, the Belly Up management's working within the Wonderfest.
I heard they
right?
were going to book some people from the Deep End or West Coast Weekender too.
Wait, what?
But yeah, like if anybody hasn't heard what Wonderfest is like they're doing like a 9-stage festival, music festival on the port of San Diego, and like the ferries are gonna take you to different stages and everything. It sounds insane. I hope it's not like some Firefest shit, but like that idea, and if that becomes something big, like that could be a major figure within the city that could promote, like, oh, yo, San Diego's a dope ass city.
Yeah, and I think one thing that Wonderfront's doing that's cool is really just embracing San Diego. You know, Kaboo, like, that's a bunch of dudes from Denver. Like, that's not
You're not even
local
from
people.
San Diego.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, they don't even like hire locally, which sucks. It's like they bring in all their support staff from like all these other parts of the country, which is just like, you know, and we had a big like issue with those guys that I'm not going to get into at the moment.
Oh yeah, I read about it.
Yeah. But you know, like with Wonderfront, Ernie from the Sports Arena is, you know,
Who's also been in the scene for, I mean, his
yeah.
family's legendary in producing events.
Absolutely. But you know, it's essentially him and this guy Paul Thornton,
Texas, right?
Texas. Yeah, he.
But I think that's the challenge that I'm trying to get to. It's like, and my business partner Oscar in West Coast Weekender, he comes here and we're talking about this in this beautiful venue. We just fucking laced up a dope ass boutique festival. Props to my team for sure. But it's like, why does it take some dude from Texas to come to the port, and they got $500,000 from the San Diego Tourism Authority. Like, I want to keep that in San Diego.
Think about it though. It's like, would you rather have a dude from Texas coming in and partnering with a local guy, or would you rather have AEG do it?
That's true.
Yeah. And I tend to think it's, better than, having somebody that's going to come in and establish local partnerships, in my opinion, is better than like Golden Voice just doing mini Coachella in San Diego. Yeah, and I don't know. And then, obviously with Cross, those dudes for the most part are all local. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, but like you said, like you mentioned, like, oh, some dude from Texas is coming here, he's gonna do a festival. Like, is that representative of San Diego? It's like half of San Diego is not from San Diego. Everybody's a transplant. But like, it doesn't mean that just because you're from somewhere else, you can't represent the city. I mean, if anything, San Diego, that's part of the identity. It's like we are
That's true.
transplant
I mean, the
people.
scope of that event, though, will change the perception globally
Of San Diego, it could. And
They got to pull it off first, though.
yeah, yeah.
But I mean, I feel like in a national landscape of just festivals in general, like if you're not doing, you're doing 45,000 people, like that's a festival. I mean, it's even difficult to, we did 1,500 people yesterday, and it doesn't really, I don't know that it changes the spectrum of anything.
I mean, I would disagree. It's like how Fernando was saying about like SD Pride. Nobody gave a shit 10 years ago. But I was reading an article recently where it's like now, like there was a teenager who ran away from Austin, Texas, to move to Hillcrest because they heard Hillcrest was a very open community. And it's like, you think that happened 10 years ago? Like somebody from a different side of the country just comes here because they heard one neighborhood here had that acts like accessibility for them? Like that's a big deal. And I think SD Pride being one of the biggest prides in the whole world is a huge factor in that. So yeah, like these festivals can be just like events to some people, but for a lot of other people, that's a cultural shift.
Community, that's community. That's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Maybe I'm just stuck in the bubble, or like, I agree, and it makes me think for sure.
I think that one of the big shifts, other structural shifts we did, was we invested a full-time marketing communications person. Because it's one thing to do the work and know that you're doing good work, and it's a whole other thing to let the rest of the world know that you're doing good work. And it was a risky investment. Like, do we pay a full-time person instead of all these small contracts here and there? Like, we lumped it all in, we hired one person, and now that person oversees a team of 60 volunteers who are all professionals in their field, donate their graphic design skills, donate their PR skills. And I think that's really another thing that helped to elevate us on that international scene. And thankfully, SCTA won't give us money, but they will support getting that message out internationally, because they also recognize the depth of work that we're doing with music and social justice. And so now San Diego Pride has this reputation within the international LGBT community, and that's slowly permeating out to the non-LGBT community. Because you're right, not everyone would know Hillcrest or San Diego, that's a place to go to, but they know that now. And I think, I'm trying to remember the numbers off the top of my head. We had, last year we had that we could track, so it's more, 46 different visitors from 46 different countries and 435 cities around the world came to San Diego Pride. And so that evolution is slow, but word of mouth is the best marketing you can get. But when you supplement that with earned media and building those relationships with Vanity Fair and Paper Magazine and The Advocate and all these having our stuff covered in New York Times, what pride has been in the New York Times or LA Times? Ours has, but it takes a lot of that extra work. And investing in that person, getting to a place where we could even invest in that person, made a huge difference, because we knew we're doing good work, but you had to somehow get that message out there.
Agreed.
Does some of that have to do with just, because you guys have basically been around for 40 plus years, 45, right?
45.
So and forgive my ignorance here, but I have to assume that makes it one of the oldest Pride festivals, right?
Yes.
So do you think just the longevity is sort of what has led you guys to the point you're at now?
No, I really think it's the recent turning point. It was bringing people on Gardenia.
You leveled up.
Yeah, we leveled up. Because, like, so most prides are all volunteer run. Like, around the world, they're almost all volunteers. San Diego was the first pride to hire an executive director in 1991. We hired an executive director, Tim Williams, died 3 years later from HIV. But he was the first person to sort of like begin elevating it. But even then, everybody else was a volunteer. When I joined, we only had 2 staff. So that tells you, like 8 years ago, we went from 1 staff to 2 staff within like 20 some years. So it was a long process, but it was really like Wayne Crenshaw setting that initial vision of like, how do you do more and be more and make those strategic investments? And then like saying, okay, you know what? Instead of just having a volunteer entertainment director or a contract entertainment director that comes in for 3 months out of the year, like, no, this is a full-time job. And by hiring someone full-time, we actually save money in that negotiation process. By like hiring a full-time marketing communications person, we saved money and we made more money. And so like at the end of the day, yeah, it's a small nonprofit, but it's a business, and I've grown it from like 1.1 million to 3.5, and it like I think like as a homeless kid, like I never thought I'd be running a multi-million-dollar business, but like that's also what it is, and I had to learn that stuff along the way, and it was hard as hell, but I think it wouldn't be what it was without that strategic vision of music, social justice, and like how do you, like I love that you write blogs, like that's incredible. Like we write weekly blogs, and it's like you're getting 45,000 people to buy a ticket. Great, I have their email address, and every week you're gonna get an email that educates you about what's happening in the community, what policies there are, and so it's all of those things working together over the long term. But like that long term, for us was really just the last 8 years.
How long so in the last 8 years, how difficult was it to make that pivot with the team? I would assume you have a board of directors or something like that?
Board of directors was on board off and on, but like we've blown up a few times even in those 8 years. I'm the 6th executive director in 7 years, to tell you how hard that transition was. And for most of those years, for like 6 of those 8 years, I worked 7 days a week, 12 16-hour days, because I was not only like trying to run the thing as the operations manager, I was doing the finance, I was doing the marketing communications, I was doing the education and advocacy work. And so if I didn't do it, if I didn't stay there those long hours, all those days, like it didn't get done. Like G was right there with me. Like we were like, boo, it's 11 o'clock at night. Why are you still here? Boo, it's 1 in the morning. What are we doing? We're crazy. We're fucking crazy. You know, and then we go get tequila shots at Bourbon Street. But, and do it all again the next day. And so, you know, I don't want you to think that this was like super easy or we just had this handed to us. We struggled so much. And like, I mean, we joke every year, like, okay, if no one cries this year, we're gonna get team jackets. Like, it's just, you know, so.
Yeah, if you're not asking, like, why the fuck are we doing this, Oscar? Like, that's what we'll say sometimes. I'm like, dude, I mean, because of this, though.
Save me a jacket. I want one.
So, what is your vision for the future of San Diego's music scene? All of you, if any of you want to contribute to that.
This.
Anybody, just whoever wants to speak their mind, what does the future hold for San Diego?
I mean, I hope that the bridge between the people who are on top, like a lot of you, all of you are, and then more grassroots efforts like the things that I do, I hope that those bridges can continue to connect so we can create more local partnerships and in a sense, create that cultural identity. And I hope that eventually in 10 years we could be having this panel again and this room will be filled and this West Coast Weekenders Festival will be humongous and Wonderfest is going to be the other humongous festival and other festivals, and SD Pride is going to be a huge festival, you know? And we can all talk about this moment right here specifically right now. We're all like, oh yeah, 10 years ago we kind of sat all down together and talked about this and we saw it being this huge thing. And I think these efforts, and I respect Justin so much for bringing all these people together because this is what creates that future.
I had that conversation with Justin. I said, I can't wait to see this thing become what, like, you know, what Miami was and things like that, you know. A few weeks ago, I was telling you, before I decided to jump on the panel, you know.
I'm so happy you did. Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, people look back at like, or people may look at certain things and be like, oh, it's not as big as it can be, and it discourages them because they think of everything so short-sighted, where it's like, it could be and it will be bigger, it's just not right now. And that doesn't mean it's not gonna happen ever. I mean, you look at any scene and that's always gonna be the case. In the beginning, it's always been shitty and it's always been small and the community's always been little. And it might not feel empowered at that moment, but eventually it will. And as long as people are confident in that, that's fine.
That's it. Trying to see which one works. This one? No. Look, they both work. See, you just have to use it. Two things. I've loved the evolution of what our organization has been able to contribute. And like, I think sitting here in this room, if I could ask anything of you all, is to engage in our nonprofit music scene. Because like, it's all professionals who are giving their time to something because it's more than just music. And the people who give their time like understand that. And we're only gonna be able to elevate ourselves as a nonprofit if more people in San Diego's music industry recognize the importance of what it is that we're doing and also give their time and talent in some way to our organization, and that's gonna help it grow. So that's one thing. If I could make an ask, it's like, how are your companies, your organizations, your agencies, your artists, like, how can you contribute to San Diego's nonprofit music scene? Because that's what we are. That's one. The other, you know, I told you our benchmark metrics, like baseline, like at least 50% women, at least 50% people of color, like LGBTQ people, at least one trans artist. Like, what are the metrics for you to make San Diego's music scene less white and less male? And no offense to the white men in the room, like, you're all great and I love you, and you're doing great work. And also, let's highlight other diverse talent. Like, if we want to be a world-class city, we can't just put white men on the stage, because the rest of the world is not just white men. And people want to see themselves reflected. Like, they want to see themselves up on, like, spinning, performing, on that microphone. Like, there are incredible diverse artists out there, and if you're not putting them on your stage, you can't expect the rest of the world to come to your venue. So you have to diversify the talent that you're elevating, or you can't expect your audience to become more diverse and grow.
Preach.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's a challenge, though. It really is.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Belly Up's probably one of the guiltiest venues in San Diego for putting a bunch of white men on stage, you know? But, you know, it's tough, though. It really is. You know, I've promoted shows for King Princess or, you know, Peaches or, like, Big Frida or any of a number of acts that definitely bring some different diversity. But there's also this issue within the music business itself as a whole, just about the number of acts that are diverse and aren't just sort of this old cookie cutter model of what a rock band should be. And I mean, just the fact that you guys can pull off what you do with your programming, like, that's super impressive.
Very impressive.
You know, I know people that do festivals that try to make sure that they're inclusive, and they have a hard time finding female acts that fit their format sometimes. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's just the whole thing has to change.
The dialogue. This dialogue though is perfect.
And sorry to like keep talking about it, because I know and I understand the challenge and the fear.
Yeah.
And I say fear because like even our folks, like, you know, we have to question, like, are we making the right decision? But when we had only 11,000 people coming to the event, and I say only because we've grown, but we had 11,000 people come to the event, but when we made those conscious decisions to change and diversify who was on that stage, meaning that we were also diversifying who we were pushing out in the mainstream media and pushing and diversifying who we were pushing out on our social media, like the faces and the shades of skin and the genders, like they're all different now. And that was scary because like, oh, are we gonna lose people? And you know what, I'm not gonna lie, we did. We lost some white men. But they found other spaces and they're doing just fine. But like, we did lose some white men for a little bit.
They always come back.
But they came back because they saw like, oh, this event is like growing and growing and growing and you're getting more people. So like we never dipped in attendance. Like we had maybe a couple years, like, well, we had 1 year of like flat attendance, and then we ticked up. And then we ticked up, and then like we started getting those white guys back, because they were like, wait, this is actually like where all the cool people are. And so I know that like change is hard and change can be scary, but if you lean into it and you market it appropriately, which I always go back to marketing communications, I think you're gonna see the payoff, and you're gonna be doing some good in the world at the same time.
I just want to quickly say how, like, I mean, look at the panel right here. We're pretty diverse. I mean, I'm a Latina woman. I hear Justin.
I'm brown.
He's pretty brown. We have women. We're pretty diverse, so I appreciate that, and thank you to Oscar and for the West Coast Weekender team. Latino, yep.
White guy.
Anyway, hey, it's diverse. You know, it's part of the conversation, and I appreciate that.
Cool. This was fun. I'm really, I wanted to thank Scarlett. Thank you for letting me jump in on this with you. And I wanted to thank everyone. It's been really insightful. I love dialogue. I think that, and I thank everyone for taking a seat and being here. And yeah, so I wanted to open it up to questions, but I also wanted to just thank everyone. I mean, this whole weekend and the fourth year West Coast Weekender and this venue, and everyone sitting in these seats, it's been an amazing journey, and I'm really still trying to process it and make sure that everyone has a great experience with this. And you know, my partners here, Chris and Oscar and Jessica and Eric, and I know I'm really happy, and I really appreciate the dialogue, and I can't wait to grow with everyone and keep creating. And with that, you know, if we can open up
Any
questions.
Marcel? You can use, yeah. Oh, all right. Come over here. Oh, he has a whole list.
One. No, I'm just kidding. I just want to say hi to the whole panel. You guys have been having a really great conversation, really thought-provoking and really inspirational. I'm going to direct the question to, hi, Fernando. Hi, Gardenia. How you guys doing? To your recent point just now about the fear of changing the demographics, but then really aggressively going towards them. I think it was Sex and the City and the character of Samantha who made this observation about influencing when she was like, first the gays, then the girls, then the industry. And I thought that that was really profound, actually, and kind of relevant to what you're saying. But earlier there was some dialogue about how house and techno arose from gay clubs. And it's my understanding that this is really true. Throughout the world, the underground dance music scene was at times only represented in gay clubs. This sound was able to develop and evolve and remain safe because we were keeping this form of musical expression safe in the same way that we were also keeping our own people safe. Moving forward, will SD Pride Festival continue to acknowledge the importance of new voices in the DJ world and book queer, renowned DJs? And would you say DJs are considered just as valuable as booking a popular vocal performer?
Totally. To answer your question, we, with the marginal diversity platform that we have, when we do the bookings, this year we really looked into what we have missed in the past and what we need to bring to the table as more queer artists, such as King Princess, for instance, and just really bring a percentage, again, queer to each program, each day, on each stage, and we have looked at the platform of having more queer artists on board. So as soon as we release the lineup on May 30th, you'll be able to see the whole lineup
Who's
and how
playing?
diverse it is.
And well,
You.
and so to your question about DJs
Pete.
specifically,
Pete's playing.
so we have 4 stages, and they're somewhat separated by genre, but you know, that genre is like somewhat fluid. So and it's all actually like based on the evolution of our community's connection to communities of color. And so there used to be just a San Diego Pride in like one stage that had a beverage garden, and like it was pretty small. And then there was this other event that was called, it went through several different name changes. It was Ebony Pride, it was Black Pride, it was Urban Pride. And so then as they sort of struggled over the years, we made a commitment as an organization to bring them in. And so that became the movement stage. And so the name The Movement is an acknowledgement of the music movement that was driven by queer, black, and brown people. And so that right there, it's not only just a stage, it's hip hop, it's gospel, it's R&B, and it's really driven by the queer black community. And near it is all the queer black centered LGBTQ resources. The same thing happened with our Mundo Latino stage. There used to be a separate event organization called Latin Pride, and we made a commitment to bring them in. There used to be a separate organization that was called Dyke March, and we brought them in, and that's where the 50% women commitment comes from. We have the Euphoria stage, which is where we like hold up our house and club and EDM, and like that's where those DJs perform there. And so then we have our main stage, and that's anything from singer-songwriters, pop acts. We've had DJ there like Ruby Rose before she was a thing, like before she was even popular was there. And you know, so I think like we try to like have different stages based on that genre. I think this year you're gonna see the best EDM, club, house music that we've had in a while from the Euphoria stage, because we were able to take control back from Sony. That was an old contract that I inherited. And so Gardenia, like, we just finished it today or yesterday, Euphoria, so it's gonna look pretty awesome.
Hell yeah.
I actually have two questions. One is directed more at you. You communicate with a very broad public, with specific needs or identity, but it's very broad across the world, all kinds. What are the tools in your toolbox to get your message across when it's such a fearful, angry, hush-hush sometimes message? You said patience before, it's not just patience. And then the other question to everybody, then you can take it away, is saturation. You said what Miami used to be. You said, let's make this, grow huge. I think that communication is based on a very specific message that identifies your company, entity, whatever it is. In your case, you're very broad. In your case, what is the definition of the West Coast Weekender? Can you get 40,000 people and keep whatever your identity is of the Weekender? Or does it become something else? Does it become crossed on, on the Bay?
So I've been, as I said, my background was in public education policy, LGBTQ advocacy, and like political work. So messaging was the like strongest part of that. So that's like one of my skill sets that I've been able to bring. And Alex, who's actually here, Marcom director in the back, like chat with him too, because he's really honed that down. But I'll say that we've distilled down that message into a voice. So like if you look at our content, we have a voice and a brand image, but that our voice, that guiding beacon, is really simple that we abide by at all times, and it's justice with joy. Sounds simple, but whatever the content that you come out of it, we're not aggressive in order to put our message out. Like, we use the opportunity and the privilege that it is to put on such a great celebration, and we talk about joy and that pursuit of justice with a joyful message. So the deaf ears on the other side are not the people who we're trying to get to the festival. That's the rest of the work that's year round. Right. So you're talking about year round, and like I don't want to take up the time from like this, and like let's have a conversation about what like movement building and like moving the needle is all about, because like that's real hard work that we do. But this is like all about the music, and I would love to talk to you. I want to be respectful of like centering on the music scene.
Oh, to me?
Your turn.
What was the question again?
Saturation.
Saturation. Oh my God.
Not
dude.
losing your core messaging.
Oh yeah, and what is
I
West
think
Coast
that
Weekender?
honestly, the base starts with relationships and quality, and your dedication to creating a win-win with your guests, with the people that I work with the opportunities that we create, with the lights that we do, with the venues. Like, the growth potential stems from that. So I try to work honestly, and I think what has created, the brands that I've been able to curate have all come out of that base of honesty, creating a win-win, and always trying to have a long-term relationship in mind with these people. I'm looking out at the room, and I've worked with pretty much 90% of, I've done commerce or business with all these people that are sitting here. And I guess with saturation, the people that, sometimes the dots don't connect, and that's okay. And everyone wants to create, everyone, they want to be a DJ, they want to produce events. I think now more than ever, there's a festival popping up everywhere. But I think for me and for my partners, we do this out of authentic necessity. Like, we have to create these things. People need a place to connect. They need a place to have dialogue. They need a safe space as well that's inclusive of everyone that wants to enjoy music and connect with people and make memories. And all the details behind that are basically all the relationships that I have. Friends are all my business partners. I work with them. I'm Kevin and Tomas and Marcel and Eric and Pete and Andy and Chris and Vaughn. Like, these are all people, and I would love to see more people be part of that dialogue and lift each other up. So as far as saturation, I want to work with people like that as much as possible, and I don't see saturation as a problem. And
it creates change. The saturation does, because it makes people want to experience something else because they did that, 50 times.
Or they see it.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe it allows room for collaboration too.
So yeah, I guess the question also is is there a critical mass of people that give a shit about what we're doing? And that's the question all the time. Is doing West Coast Weekender, do people really care? I'd like to think so. Oscar thinks so. Chris thinks so. I hope people leave this weekend and tell their friends and have intention to actually bring people together and have more dialogue and create more things. I don't know. The saturation aspect with festivals, yes, I think there are way too many festivals.
And again, it's going to create something else, because 20 years ago, there wasn't this thing called festival season, right? So, and now there is. And something new is going to pop out, and it's going to be exciting. And maybe me and you won't even know about it, but someone that's 16, a big movement in the youth are going to love it, and they're gonna do it, then it's gonna get saturated and something new is gonna pop up.
And I think it pushes you to make sure that what you're producing is important enough and meaningful enough for people to give a shit about. Because otherwise you're just part of the noise, and it is a very saturated market. It makes it challenging for us to book anything, because people have radio clauses, and so it makes that booking process so much harder, just to even get people to be able to sign, because there's so many festivals, and within 50 miles or within 90 days of the event, or before but not after, and you have to negotiate all of that, and so you have to elevate yourself and do something that's important enough that the artists want to prioritize you and your event and coming to you, and that your attendees are prioritizing you and your event.
Agreed. I don't think that's going to change, though. The competitive set, the Live Nations, the AEGs, it's definitely a real, it's a business too, and I think some people tend to not forget about that. But I'm just very honest with myself, and we are a boutique festival, and it's a small brand. Even you have probably challenges.
What's that?
You probably have challenges in talking about talent and saturation with talent buying.
Yeah,
sourcing stuff.
There's a glass ceiling somewhere, and I don't think the market's hit it yet. I think in a lot of ways it's still growing, and I think that there's been growing pains that happen along the way. And the festival thing, all these things not only is there Kaboo and now Wonderfront, but there's also Ohana and Coachella and all these things that have these giant radius clauses that really can make your lives difficult. And I think, there's been a ton of festivals that have just basically shuttered over the past 5 years. Like pretty massive ones too, you know, like Sasquatch, like that was a huge festival and it's gone. So, you know, the problem I think becomes in a lot of ways, you know, these super inflated ticket prices.
But that's talent fees, though.
Well, I mean, it's talent fees, but you know, Coachella's making money. You know, Kaboo's at a point now where they're making money. You know, and there's only so much that people are able to afford. You know, it's like, and I think that's great that what you guys do with Pride with it
accessibility,
being, you know, just accessible to everyone.
And
you know?
also because the target audience is changing, you know, maybe people in a certain age range aren't partying anymore, and you get newcomers that are broke college students or whatever, and they can't afford those events. So you also have to think about your target audience is always fluctuating, and that makes a big part of the event's success, right?
Yeah. Which, you know, I think it's almost kind of a shame that it almost seems like Coachella has just turned into a target audience of people that are fairly well-to-do and want to be there so they can have their
Instagram pictures
on point, you know? What's that? Yeah, exactly. Like that kind
I love
of shit.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as, you know, specific to San Diego, you know, like I was saying, I think the market's still growing. I think there's still a lot of changes that are happening, and I think there's a lot of really cool things that are going on that are, you know, hopefully the, you know, recent things that have happened with all the Live Nation stuff and all the things that they've sort of taken over. I don't think it's gonna.
I did invite John and Candace to chat too.
I mean, I love those guys. You know, they're good people, and we do business with them. But I don't think that those entities are going to stop things like the Travelers Club and the next generation of kids that are seeing, you know, all these cool things that all of us are all doing and involved with. And, you know, there's that attitude of, oh, I want to do that too. You know, all of us at some point, we were just trying to figure out our way in life. And I think everybody here has a certain amount of passion at what they do. And that's, you know, why we all do the things that we do, because it is, in a lot of ways, a labor of love, you know? So.
True that. I think we have one more question, and we'll go party in the park. Anyone?
Anyone? One more question.
This is just more of a comment, kind of piggybacking on what Andy was saying, which is that, I mean, this is about the future of San Diego. And wherever it's going, I mean, you guys are moving the needle. You guys are passionate, smart, hardworking. Look where you were like 5 years ago. This thing didn't even exist 5 years ago. I mean, where were you 5 years ago? 5 years from now, 10, 15 years from now, the needle's moving in the right direction for the city, and it's because of people like you. I mean that, bottom of my heart. I mean, you're the people that are making it happen, you know? I'm just the guy who shows up and puts a wristband on, dances around a little bit. But I just have tremendous respect for folks like you who dedicate so much time to the arts and to elevating the city. So that's just, I think we're going in the right direction, you know? We're going in the right direction. So that's all I got to say.
I agree.
Thank you. Yeah, San Diego.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A round of applause for everyone. Thank you for being here.
So who's going to see Farside?
Now it's time for some margaritas. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Yeah, that was awesome. Woo. Woo.